I'd like to welcome you to the very first edition of Heart to Heart with the Hansons. This is Sunday, April 6, 2014, and I'm your host, Reverend Kristen Hanson, and joining me this evening is my amazing husband and best friend, Leif.
Thank you, Kristen. Hello, everybody out there. We're so excited to be here this evening. Each week, we're looking to feature a different guest who's overcome extraordinary odds in their marriage. Okay, the purpose of this show is to give our guests an opportunity to share their experience and hopefully help a few listeners in the process.
Absolutely. And during tonight's program, you're going to have the opportunity to get to know who we are, some of the adversity that we faced in our life and in our marriage, how we've made these changes, and ultimately, how can we help you? But first, we'd like to talk a little bit about our ministry and the type of business we do, the type of clients that we work with, and what we see really going on in relationships today. And then we're going to go into a little bit about our personal stories as to the why we do this work. And in the last half of the show, we're going to open up the phone lines and give you guys an opportunity to call in and ask us some questions, get some information, and if we have time, maybe do some mini coaching sessions, which would be fun.
That would be great.
It would.
Okay, so let me explain a little bit. Heart to Heart with the Hansons is part of the Sacred Circle Ministry, an interfaith organization specializing in metaphysical and holistic healing modalities. As relationship recovery coaches, we help people develop and maintain healthy relationships through coaching, hypnotherapy, and developing spiritual foundation.
Exactly, which is all very important when moving forward.
It really is.
Yeah, and some of the examples of the clients that we coach with is where one or both in the relationship are suffering from something such as alcoholism, drug addiction, sex addiction, maybe there's co-dependency, there's been infidelity, domestic violence, maybe even one or more in the relationship were sexually abused as children, or maybe sexually assaulted later in life. And maybe they suffer from low self-esteem and self-worth issues because of the circumstances that they've been through.
It's tough today to keep a marriage together, let alone a second marriage.
Absolutely.
I was reading in Psychology Today, the divorce rate is 40% for first marriages, 67% for second marriages.
That's just unreal.
And 73% for third marriages. That's just crazy.
It doesn't even really give people, a lot of hope when they hear those statistics for the second and third marriage.
I feel bad for those people looking at the prospect of marriage.
Absolutely.
It's like the deck is stacked against you from the get, and how do you beat those kind of odds in a normal relationship, let alone one where you have some serious challenges, like going forward in a second or third?
Absolutely.
The more divorces you have, they find it's, easier to get divorced again.
Yes.
Because there aren't that many bonds to hold you together, like having children, like in a first marriage.
Yes.
Family ties and traditions. There's not a lot of time to build those because you're in your second and third, and you've scrapped quite a lot.
And sometimes when you're going forward into a second marriage, it's really hard to integrate yourself into that person's family. Their children get adjusted to your children, and then there's that whole factor going on.
That whole melding, and there's no manual on that. Nothing makes that easy, Each time you marry and get involved in a partnership, then you bring the baggage from the past, the issues, and the drama.
Yes.
You have less to lose financially because as you go through your first one, you lose a lot.
Yes.
You go through a second divorce, you're going to lose the rest. So really your foundation is seriously compromised.
Absolutely. And, people go through, you're going through bankruptcies, you're going through foreclosures, you have a short sale, and you're even looking at repossessions. And a lot of times people just completely bottom out after the first relationship.
Oh, definitely.
If there's anything left in the second.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Exactly.
People get married with the same problems they had in the last relationship, and nobody's really stopping to think about that. Most people think it was their ex's fault.
Yes.
And it just turns into a recipe for disaster.
And, and myself included, when I got out of my first marriage, I had a lot to blame my ex-husband for.
Oh, there's been plenty that I've said about my ex as well. And, it isn't exactly fair. It's me who needed to take responsibility.
It's a three-way street in there. And as I went through coaching and hypnotherapy, I realized that I did, have a lot of responsibility in the marriage. And basically, a lot what it comes down to is none of us really have the information or a guidebook saying this is how we do marriage. This is how you have a relationship.
No, we really don't, you know.
You go into it with the traditions that you had. You saw the way your parents were married. You saw the way your grandparents were married, and you accepted that as your truth. This is how we're going to do it. You don't have anything else to go by. So you get into it. You get into your marriage or your long-term relationship, and you start to butt heads. Everyone has their own ideas, and no one wants to compromise because everyone thinks that they're right.
All right, yeah, use the C word there. You know, compromise. That's a dirty word.
I know you hate that word.
That has been a dirty word in my vocabulary. Let me tell you, compromise always meant one person gets what they want, the other person has to give away the bank.
Yes,
you know?
I
never liked that.
And you know, when you go into a marriage, when your marriage fails, it doesn't work out, and then a lot of times people end up divorced, and then they end up getting remarried. Often, I've heard from even some of my friends in the past, they get married on the same day that their first divorce was final.
Sometimes, yeah. And you don't even let the ink dry.
No,
and they're remarried. You know, and no consideration, no thought.
And you don't even have an opportunity to get yourself, any kind of help or any kind of healing. And then, this whole time you got this whole big ball of wax going, and stop to think about adding your new partner. They have their children, they have their family, they have a different set of friends, different expectations, even different faiths. And then, you both may have an ex, and then you have their family. Not to mention, how many people do you know that have children with, 2, 3, and 4 different people? So you take all that and you add it into your new relationship with another person. And what are you supposed to do? How are you supposed to handle that? And then there's also residual emotions like rage, anger, resentment. There may be jealousy. Broken boundaries, broken trust. You have this gigantic mess sitting in front of you, and how in the world can you make sense of it?
That's the truth. That's not.
How did we make sense of it? It was a nightmare, even under the best of circumstances. And we had a deep love for each other. Going into that.
Did.
We still do, but we started off on a good foundation.
But it's been tough. It's always tough when you're in that situation.
And then if you can imagine having, all these past issues, your past baggage, all those different things, and now you're going to add even more to it by adding alcoholism, drug addiction, someone that's been abused, someone who has made other poor choices in their life, and you add that to the fire of the relationship, and then what goes on then? And that's exactly what happened to us.
Sure is.
I'm an alcoholic, I've been a drug addict. I've had a lot of issues myself. We're going to talk about you too. There's the things that you face, and you get all this together, and how do you make this work? So.
That's definitely a tough situation, That's where relationship recovery coaching does come in. In relationship recovery coaching, it's all about taking all of that, putting it into perspective, and moving it forward. Coaching is much more different than counseling. For those of you who really aren't up on the counseling situation, counseling, they concentrate on the past. And in coaching, we concentrate on the here and now and going forward. That past does not come into play. That past is known as your story. And your story is not going to be told all the time. You get usually a chance to tell your story once. After you've told that, they don't want to hear it again.
No, not at all.
Because that's a lack of action. You're moving forward.
Yes.
It's about starting with a clean slate and not reliving the past and not bringing up the past, but releasing that past, so you're both free from all of that shame and guilt. Our
business is just not about saving marriages and relationships. We also recognize that there's times you have to walk away.
Sure, there is.
When someone isn't willing to meet you halfway, and when someone isn't willing to do the work with you for whatever reason, you do have to walk away, and that's what happened to us. You were married for 17 years in your first marriage.
20 years in the bucket if you count, everything.
Well, I don't know what happened there, but if
technical difficulties. We've been having some technical difficulties, so please bear with us.
I don't know what happened. I just hope that someone out there is hearing us, because I can't get on my iPad to find out if anyone is listening to us. So maybe if you could send us a tweet or a chat so we know that that you're actually listening to us, that we're making it that far.
Would you like to take a moment and how about we give out the call-in number?
If someone would like to call in and feel free to ask us questions, the number is 917-889-9952. And if you're on the blogtalkradio.com/heart-to-heart with the Hansons, the call-in number to be a guest is on there, and you can call that phone number, and you can be on the list to be one of our guest callers.
And that number again, for those who may not have a pen and piece of paper ready, is 917-889-9952. So back to our discussion.
Back to our discussion. So we were. I apologize. We were working on this yesterday, and we're new to this. This is our first time doing a broadcast like this.
Is.
So thank you for your patience.
So, going forward, let's get into a little bit about us.
Okay.
How about a little bit about ourselves? So,
okay.
Kristen and I have been married for 3.5 years. Okay, this is both of our second marriage. Okay, and Kristen, you're wife, a mom. You have 2 daughters, and are from Detroit area, from the Detroit area.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I've noticed is you love more than anything helping people. Okay, tonight we're going to talk a little bit about that and why it's so important. So tell us a little bit more about you and your past careers.
Well, I had been a hairdresser and a massage therapist, my whole life. I have been a teacher, and I've always worked in a position to where I've been a coach, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know, I got into school to discover what coaching was, and they put a name on it with a format, and it freaked me out because I just couldn't understand it.
You've been doing it all your life,
I've been doing it all my life, and, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoy working with people, and I enjoyed making people look and feel better. But down the road, I discovered I'd rather work on the insides of people than on the outsides. And when I got to coaching, I decided it was a perfect way for me to blend my life experience with something that I love, and realize that a lot of things that I went through in my life wasn't in vain, that I indeed have a divine purpose.
That you definitely do.
Yeah.
And then going forward, I'm certain a lot of your skills going forward, how you're going to help these people, have been shaped by your past years, and for people out there to be able to relate to you, if you'd be comfortable in sharing some of your past.
At school we're taught not to be cut in our story, and I'm trying to get myself ready together to tell this story, to talk about and to talk about myself in this way has been a little bit challenging. But to begin, to give you an outlook into how I got to this point. When I grew up as a child, my father was an alcoholic.
Right.
And as most of our parents were back in the day, it was a lifestyle. Everybody drank, they were rubbing whiskey on our gums.
And you were getting a shot of beer when you went to a wedding.
Absolutely,
and you were just a little kid.
You did.
Everybody had to give a toast.
Everybody drank, and my grandfather was always like, "Oh, you got to do a shot." So, we grew up with that type of mentality, and my parents at the time, it was a struggle. They had some issues going on. My father working, being a carpenter, and there was a lot of unrest in the house. And I grew up with a lot of insecurity about myself. For a long time, I blamed my dad for the problems that I had.
Right.
And then I realized, later that the actions and decisions I made were based solely on my own merit.
Yeah.
And as I got older, and I got into my teen years, is when I really started to fall apart. I got involved with drugs.
Right.
And I got involved drinking.
Sure.
And when I was 15 years old, I ran away from home.
Okay.
And I met someone, and, through a series of unfortunate circumstances,